Welcome to Java Space. So in this video, we are going to talk about a transactional context. So in the previous video, I showed you the inner workings of how transaction management actually is handled. And we saw that obviously the transaction manager will begin a transaction and it will commit a transaction. And we know that for it to do that, it requires a connection. Now the question would be, where does it get all that? So that's why this video is a transactional context. I have dedicated this to explain where the transactional context come from, where the connection object comes from, when that method is that is annotated with a transactional is executed. So where does the connection come from? So that the transaction manager can begin, can commit, can roll back transactions. Where does the transactional context come from? So this is the question we want to answer. So in Java, there is a thread local. And a thread local is a class in the java.lang package that allows you to create thread local variables. And these variables are unique to each thread, which means that each thread accessing a thread local variable gets its own independent copy. But in the context of Spring, the thread local Spring will set a transactional context in the thread local. And this is similar to Spring Security. With Spring Security, you can access the authentication object throughout the chain, throughout the program. You can just say security context holder, dot get context, dot get authentication object or something, I don't remember. But the idea is that the authentication object, you get it through the thread local. So because you will have authenticated first, and we also know that security happens to be another cross-cutting concern. So you will have authenticated first, and the authentication would have been saved for you in the thread local, such that it's available throughout the chain, throughout the whole request life cycle and all that. So Spring will set a transactional context in the thread local. So the thread executing that request that wants to transfer money from Bob to Alice from one account to another, in that particular thread, the transaction context would be set. And you can access everything in terms of connection, data source. You can access it manually in that context. Because remember, nothing in Java can execute outside of a thread. That's why, when we used to code Java, when you get an error or an exception, you will see a message, exception in thread main. And in those days, we didn't even care to answer what does this really mean. It means now this is running in the main thread and there was an exception. So now this can be accessed from everywhere in the thread. The connection, the data source and all that. So you can get the JDBC connection and you can actually use it. That's where in the transactional context, the transaction manager is able to begin a transaction, obviously through from a connection, then roll back or commute if needs be.